Welcome to Tough Conversations with David Wood, where play meets depth. We help teams and high-performing leaders like you to master your tough conversations so you succeed in your career and in your life. When we avoid tough conversations, we stay small. Teams stay disengaged, conflicted, and ultimately end up quitting. When we lean in and master our tough conversations, they become the defining moments that literally shape our careers, our relationships, and our lives. So let's dive in and master your next tough conversation so you can be the leader that you would follow. Let's play. Hey, Real Nation. I'm excited for this episode with a very special man, Jack Canfield, co-founder of Chicken Soup for the Soul series, author of The Success Principles, an amazing guy. I call him a friend. He was kind enough to write the foreword to my book, Get Paid for Who You Are, and he came and spoke at my live event in San Francisco. So this episode is an excerpt from Jack's speech. It'll be about 15 minutes, and then I'll come in at the end and anchor some of the points that Jack raised. Now, Jack will speak about coaching, a coaching practice, but this episode is for anyone with a dream. It's for anyone who needs to market or sell, anyone who gets stopped and doesn't want to get stopped. If you're an entrepreneur, perhaps even a solopreneur, you're a go-getter, or you're someone who just wants to lead better, there are gems in here. Here are a couple of highlights. I don't want to steal all Jack's thunder, but here's a little bit of what you're going to hear. How hungry people are for your inspiration and leadership. Why everybody needs a coach. Jack will tell you how many times he got rejected, and you may not believe it. And he'll talk about what stopped him giving up. He'll talk about how you can sell naturally and with passion, even when you're not a salesperson. And he'll talk about how you can make a shift from being a go-getter to being a go-giver, even within a corporation, and what's possible when that happens. And then ultimately, being willing to do whatever it takes. And these are just some of the gems that Jack's about to cover. So enjoy Jack, and I'll see you on the other side.
So how many of you have read a Chicken Soup for the Soul book? Can I see? Look around the room. Look at this. This is an amazing phenomenon. I can go to places like Oman in the Middle East. I just did a 5-country tour in the Middle East, in Oman, Kuwait, Bahrain, Dubai. Same thing. Unbelievable to me. 650 CEOs in Oman. Everyone raised their hand. And what it really says to me is how hungry people are for inspiration. How hungry people are to be led to, reflected back to, and inspired to go for the essence of who they are and really share their magnificence, bring it forward and express it. And so you're all engaged in helping people do that, which is why I said earlier, I'm just so happy to be here. I do want to share one Chicken Soup for the Soul story, then we're going to jump into some stuff which comes out of my book, The Success Principles and The Secret and so forth, but really relating to this issue of overcoming your fears and overcoming your limiting beliefs. There's nobody in here that can't be of service to someone else, okay? And you may scare yourself if it's a corporate CEO or if it's a policeman or if it's a university professor or a psychologist. But the truth is, everybody needs reflection. Everybody needs someone to hold them accountable. I've had coaches my entire life. I am a coach. I have a coaching company. We have coaches that coach people all around the world. Several people came up to me and said, I'm in your coaching program now. And I still have coaches. Why? Just like if you're a golfer, you can't see your own swing. Someone else can say you're not following through, you're lifting your head up. So we all need that support. And by having good questions, we can lead it back to the person so that they can actually come up with their own answers. And occasionally we can suggest things that might be things they wouldn't be aware of, but they can consider. But I do want to work with you a little bit about these fears of rejection, this limiting beliefs, I'm not enough, or whatever it might be that's in there stopping you. So we'll cover that. But I did want to share one more story from Chicken Soup here. Well, the first thing I'll tell you is this, in relation to what we just talked about. This book was rejected by 144 publishers. Now, here's my question to you. You just went out and made phone calls. What if the first 144 people you called all said no? What do you think that would do to you? I mean, some of you would just go, screw it, this isn't for me, right? I'm not supposed to do this. This is too hard. Well, it took us 18 months to find a publisher, from the time we had the book finished till we got a publisher. But we didn't give up, because we knew in our heart of hearts we had something really valuable. We knew we'd go out and talk to people like you, Mark Victor Hansen, my co-author, and people would give us standing ovations. They would be moved. Their lives would change. But people in publishing said people don't read short stories, and generally literary short story collections don't sell all that well. But we knew that this was a different genre. And so 144 publishers later, someone said yes. We didn't get an advance. They thought they'd sell 20,000 copies. We said, no, we're going to do 150,000 by Christmas, came out in July, and 1.5 million in a year and a half. Now, have you ever shared a dream with somebody or the fact that you're in coaching training and had them laugh out loud at you? Yeah. Our publisher laughed out loud. He said, you guys are crazy. I said, no, we're entrepreneurs. We're people who believe that you can make something happen if you're willing to be committed to it and stick to it and use all the technology that we can learn. You know, the same year that we won the American Booksellers Book of the Year Award, which means the book that booksellers most like to recommend to people, we beat out books like Snow Falling on Cedars, which I think is one of the greatest literary books ever written. And it wasn't because it's a better book, but it was a book that people would want to recommend to people. But that same year, we won the Southern California Book Publicist Award because we had done more to publicize our book than almost anyone in the history of the world. And so you have, I talk about books and coaching and teaching and speaking as two aspects. There's the feminine side and the masculine side. The feminine side gets pregnant with an idea. It's when your intuition speaks to you. It's when you get this idea, I want to be a coach, or I want to make a difference, or I saw that person change someone's life, and I want to grow up and be able to do that. And then the masculine side is after you give birth, you got to go out and sell it. And that's why a lot of books never make it. It's why a lot of movies never make it. It's why a lot of artists never make it, a lot of songwriters. I have 3 kids in music. One's a hip-hop artist, lives up here in Berkeley, and is a DJ. I've got another son who's a drummer in New York, and I've got a son in design school up here in San Francisco who's 22. So they go from 38 down to 22. And I'll be having dinner with 2 of them tonight. And I've watched them go through this, like, how do I sell myself? How do I go out? I'm an artist, you know. I'm not a salesperson. Well, I think many of you, from what you just did, that exercise, you realize you don't have to be a salesperson. Everyone here is a salesperson. When you tell a friend about a movie that you really loved, oh man, we just saw The Great Gatsby. My son just saw it 4 times. Oh, wow. And he just told me how much he loved it. I'm sold, I'm gonna go see it, right? Now, he wasn't trying to sell me, but his enthusiasm for the movie was so strong that I'd be an idiot not to go see it. So if you just share the way you did, some of you on the thing, hey, you're a person that's really valuable to me. I'd like to give something back. I'd like to invite you to have this experience. One of my friends has a company where he teaches coaches how to fill their coaching practices. And what he teaches is real simple. Give away a free session. Let people test drive it. See, the problem when you're selling something, Harvard Business School did a study called How to Sell an Intangible. You can't put coaching in a box and test drive it like a car. Okay? So when you're selling something intangible, there's a couple things they learn. One is if you can let people test drive it by giving them a free sample called a free coaching call, or even just an interview, or let's talk about your life. On a scale of 1 to 10, how's your life working? If we were sitting here 3 years from now, what would have had to have happened for you to feel good about your progress? What dangers would you have to deal with? What opportunities would you have to seize? What skills would you need to develop? I mean, there are all kinds of questions you can just engage people with. One of my friends, Marcia Weeder, runs a coaching school, and she's always enrolling. Enrollment is a conversation you have with people because you care. You're in a supermarket, and you start to talk to someone behind you, which you always should do. It's a wasted opportunity if you don't. Hey, how's it going? On a scale of 1, I'm just doing a little informal survey. On a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfying is your life right now? I'm just trying to get a feel for the community. 7. Are you happy with 7? No, I would like it to be a 10. Well, what are you doing to make that happen? Nothing. Bad strategy. Have you ever considered coaching? I'm a coach. I would love to offer you a free session just to show you how much value you could get from it. Boom. One of my best friends is a woman named Deirdre Haid. Deirdre Haid's a member of an organization I started of trainers and coaches and teachers and so forth. And one of the things that was really amazing, she was a ballerina and she was a hand model, like for soap commercials and stuff. And she decided one day that she wanted to make a difference in the world. She had no idea how to go about it. And she started meditating and she started studying metaphysics and all this stuff. And one day she fell into this, I'd call it a trance. She didn't sleep for 40 days. You ever had a sleepless night? Imagine 40 days of no sleep. And if it wasn't for meditation, she probably would have gone crazy. Because meditation, you do get rest for your brain. And when it was all over, she had downloaded Kabbalah, which is this Jewish mysticism. And she just knew it all. Didn't know what she knew. She didn't know it was Jewish Kabbalah, mystical Kabbalah. She just started talking to friends about stuff. And one of his people who knew a rabbi said, "You're talking about Kabbalah. Do you know about Kabbalah?" She says, "No. You need to go talk to my rabbi." And in the real deep Kabbalistic tradition, they talk about it comes to you through you rather than you learn it by studying it. Now, she studied a lot since then. But anyway, she now gets this inner guidance that she's supposed to go and be a healer. And she doesn't know the first thing about it. She's got all this information. And this inner guidance said, make a brochure. Take an 8.5 by 11, fold it over. Put I forget what it was like a dove or something on the front. No, it was an angel. Put an angel on the front. So she had a friend draw an angel. She went to Kinko's, printed up a couple hundred. And she said, now what do I do? And her inner guidance said, go down to the grocery store and hand it out to people coming out of the grocery store. So she's standing in front of like Vaughn's, just handing out these brochures. And she had got a friend who had an office, like a chiropractor, but it was an empty room that they weren't using, and so she agreed to use that room. And so now her first client shows up. She doesn't know what to do. And this voice inside says, put one hand here and put one hand here. And now imagine energy flowing between the two hands. And people started getting healed. Now she's an advanced healer. But how many of you would be willing to stand in front of Vaughn's with a little, 25-cent brochure? But she was willing to follow the inner guidance and trust that she had a difference to make. One of the stories I tell a lot, it was in the first Chicken Soup for the Soul book, was by Tony Robbins. You all know Tony Robbins, of course. And Tony was in New York, and he was doing radio interviews. And he said to his staff, I'm going to come back around 6 o'clock, and I want you guys to have rented the van. We're going to go give away free food to people up in Harlem who are hungry, living on the streets, street people. So he comes back and he says, okay, guys, let's go. And he said, Tony, we couldn't find a van. It was Thanksgiving weekend. Every van in New York had been rented. They called Hertz, Avis, Enterprise, Thrifty, Dollar, rent an ugly duckling, whatever it was. They called them. And nobody had a van. So Tony said, let's go down on the street and get one. And he said, Tony, they're not going to let us use their vans. It's Thanksgiving. He said, come on, guys. So he goes down, and the first van that comes by in front of the hotel, Tony jumps out, and he goes like this. And he said, I learned something about New Yorkers that day. He said, they don't stop, they speed up. So he said, that wasn't working. We better go up to a traffic light where they have to stop. And then they would knock on a window, and Tony would tell them this little story, looking to rent a van, we'll pay for it, you can come along, whatever. And half hour goes by, rejection. Tony's staff is getting a little impatient. Come on, Tony, let's go eat. He says, no, we're going to do this. It's a numbers game. Remember that phrase. It's a numbers game. There's an average. It's what Brian Tracy calls the law of probabilities. The more people you ask, the more likely one of them will say yes. The more things you try, the more likely one of them will work. The more books you read, the more likely one of them will transform your life forever. The more trainings like this you come to, the more likely you'll meet your wife or husband. Who knows? But the point is that he said, we're just going to stay here until we get it. Now, about 30 minutes later, a van comes up. Tony knocks on the window. The guy says, jump in. He's going to get in the passenger seat. Guy reaches over to pick up his hat, put it on his head, so Tony doesn't sit on his hat. The hat said Salvation Army. The guy's name was Captain John Rondon. He was captain of the Salvation Army for the whole district of New York. And he said, there's a place that's better than Harlem. It's called the South Bronx. We got people living in burned out buildings. Remember, this is November in New York City. And, cold. So they went and bought 38 baskets of food, and they gave them to people. And Tony said, we lifted a lot of lives, but more importantly, I taught my staff there's always a van in New York City. And I think for us, the principles that are engaged in that story is, number one, Tony had a clear, measurable objective. He wanted to get 38 baskets of food and give them to people in New York City. He wanted to do it tonight. How much by when? The SMART goal thing that most of you probably know about. Second thing is he had a positive expectation. He fully expected to get a yes. How many of you have ever started to talk to someone thinking you're going to get a no? And then the law of attraction tells us what? You're probably going to get a no because you're presenting it. And the biggest thing I find, whether it's coaches or authors or people trying to get speaking gigs or people in multi-level marketing companies, I've done a lot of talks for them, is when you're there and you're trying to get something from them called their money, their time, their commitment, rather than you're coming from, I want to give something to you, which is the experience that most of you just had, it totally shifts the energy. Because now it's like you're coming up like I remember I was in, as this image just came back, I was in Mexico, and I was snorkeling, and down near Bar de Navidad, and this big school of fish, I mean, almost as big as this whole section of people, came swimming toward me and then started this all over my body. And it was just like, they didn't have teeth or anything, they were like, algae type things, but scared the shit out of me. And what happens is that when you're kind of, oh God, I gotta get a client, I need you, then people, it's like this, people just want to swim away like I was trying to do, right? But when you're there because you're really offering me something, and it's a gift that you've created out of your commitment to make a difference in the lives of others. And I love the way that David and the woman up here ended that session, which was, hey, I'm just learning, I'm on this journey, I know as much as I know. I think I can be helpful to you. I'd like to offer you this because I know it helped me. And when you can share it, I know it helped me. I'm so full of how it helped me, I want to share it with you. I mean, this is what built the S training, now Landmark Forum, whatever. It's just people wanting their friends to have the same experience. And then the other thing is that Tony, another principle in that story is massive action produces massive results. And the law of attraction kicked in. He attracted Captain John Rondon from the Salvation Army. How good does that get? Now, it took an hour. But let's say I could fill your practice in an hour. Would you be willing to spend the hour? Yeah. So, the fact is, be willing to do whatever it takes, within ethical bounds and all that good stuff, but be willing to go out there. When I ask people, I'll say, well, would you be willing to stand on the street and flag down cars? They go, no. Well, why not? I don't want to look that needy. I don't want people to think I need it that much. I don't want to be rejected like that. They might arrest me, God knows what. I did a seminar once, it was actually in Santa Monica, California, and we sent people like yourselves out on a break. They had to go to a mall, and they had to offer people hugs. And it was interesting, all the experiences they had, but all the fear they had about, well, people will think I'm a predator, I'll get arrested, And the stories that came back, like you were all sharing up here, were things like, I offered this woman a hug, she started to cry. It was the first hug she had in 25 years. We are a touch-deprived culture, and getting worse because of all the rules in schools and in the offices and so forth, where everyone's so afraid of, sexual harassment. So anyway, just to set a context for that, the idea that we have to be willing to make the service more important than the get. Okay? There's a wonderful book out there called Be a Go-Giver, not a Go-Getter. I think it's just called The Go-Giver. But it's a paradigm shift. And right now I'm involved in a whole thing about changing the corporate world, because right now corporations are run by the point of view that your job is to maximize profits for the shareholders, screw everything else. And what we're working with now in the transformation of business is the idea that the business's main responsibility, and we'll try to shift this into culture over the next 15 years, is to create value.
Okay, Real Nation, Jack Canfield, everybody. Wow, a lot of nuggets in there. I want to recap a couple of these so that we can really keep them, anchor them, and take them forward into our lives. So people are hungry for leadership and inspiration. You, if you choose, can provide that inspiration and leadership, whatever you're doing. Everybody needs a coach, so do you have a coach? Jack got rejected 144 times. So if something's big enough for you, if there's something that you're dreaming, something you really want, then consider, are you willing to go for it? As Jack said, are you willing to do whatever it takes? Can you apply the law of probability, realizing that if you just keep going and you're willing to be uncomfortable, you will get a yes. It's the law of probability. It's the law of large numbers. And ultimately, are you giving? Just consider, how much are you getting? That's great. But also, how much are you giving? Because when we make that shift to giving, magic can happen. So I hope you enjoyed this episode with Jack Canfield. You've been listening to Tough Conversations with David Wood. Now it's action time. Mastering your tough conversations will have a major impact on your team, your company, and you as a high-performing executive or entrepreneur. If you're ready, request a discovery session with me at playforreal.life so we can transform your team, your company, and you. And if you've enjoyed this episode, I would love you to help me spread this message of tough conversations in a very simple way. Just leave a public review at playforreal.life @canfield.com/podcast. And you may hear me read it out loud and thank you live on a future podcast. Now, let's play.